Hopefully you guys had some good time, and we're excited to get going. Coaches reported yesterday, just kind of getting all of our ducks in a row, and then our players are starting to get in here this morning, and it's exciting. You know, I thought we had a really good off-season program, and now really the work starts. And I think it's going to be important for us to stack days. A couple things that I did want to be able to touch on before I open it up for questions. With A.J. Jackson, that's obviously been a unique situation. What I think has been great that we've been able to learn is we do have a plan in place that we're confident in, that most importantly he feels good about, that hopefully leads to him, being on the field for us. But we are going to take it a day at a time. He's not going to be on a PUP or NFI list. What he'll be able to do in the meantime is some individual drills with Reggie and his group. Some of that we'll do with coaches, some of the jog throughs, the actual physical stuff he will not partake in right now. And we'll just take it a day at a time, with something of this nature. But I do feel good about the plan we have in place that, hopefully leads to him being able to go out there and compete with his teammates. And I know he is really feeling good. He's handled this like a total stud. And I think the perspective that this stuff gives you, where, it's always about the human being first and foremost, but he's got a lot of people that love him that are with him on this journey, and we're excited to be able to just take it a day at a time with him. The other thing that you guys will notice, Matthew's feeling good. He had a little bit of soreness in his back that kind of crept up when he's been throwing, feeling good. It's not anything that's necessarily new, something that he's dealt with before. Going into year 17, we were going to take a modified approach with him, kind of similar to what we did in the off-season program, and so we'll allow him to just work kind of off to the side on his own, get himself feeling as good as possible, and then he'll be ready for block 2, which will really represent once we finish the 5-day acclimation period. He feels good about that, I feel good about that, and ultimately it's about having him feel as good as possible, mentally, physically, emotionally, going into year 17, and then that's where you do feel fortunate that you got a guy like Jimmy that will step in and do a great job for the first few practices, and then Matthew will be ready to roll.
How long will he not be working in the field?
Just that first block is what we anticipate. So really, the 5-day acclimation period starts today, represents day 1, and then we'll have 2 days of practice. We'll have a jog through, then a practice, then kind of a deloaded day, and then a practice will represent the 5th day, and then after that, projection-wise, feeling good going into return.
That's how much of a concern is that? I know you sound like you'll get through it,
Yep.
but to have your quarterback going through training with that
if he was a first-year player, then I think you'd say, man, every rep really matters. I think the important thing is having a big picture perspective with a guy going into year 17, based on this being something that he's had before and dealt with, throughout different parts of his career. He's so in tune with his body, and talking with him, I feel really good. And I think that's why you want to be as careful and cautious as possible, because of the importance of him feeling good. And these are things that I don't believe it's going to affect his ability to be ready to roll. We've got a lot of time. But had he not already had as much experience as he has, maybe it allowed, maybe I feel a little bit differently, but because of his ability to communicate to me, to Reggie, do feel confident, and I think this is most importantly the right thing for him and for our football team.
You mentioned that
those OTAs periods then become, especially working with Devontae.
I didn't hear the first part.
How valuable do those OTAs periods become with him throwing in that phase?
It's really important, and I think there still can be a lot of dialogue and communication. He's going to be there in all the meetings and different things like that, but I thought they were able to really set a good foundation, and that's not exclusive to Devontae, but really just our group of skill players in general, and even some of the dialogue that's necessary between he and the offensive line. So it'll be good, but we've got some time to be able to make up some ground. And I think the important thing for us is let's stack days and be present and do the things that we can control, and I think we'll be, I think we'll be able to do that.
You said you're going to take it one day at a time with Howard.
Yep.
Is it on the table that he starts the season?
Yeah, I'm not going to rule anything out. What I also don't want to do, and hopefully you can understand this, is set expectations on something that we are in the process of learning. We have a plan in place that if things go according to plan, feel like that is a very real possibility. But again, this is the first time that I've navigated through anything like this with a player. You start to realize there's a lot of guys that have been able to, be in great situations, even though they've had to overcome, some similar issues. Trey Smith is a really cool story to look at, what he's been able to do. And so the answer is we're hopeful and optimistic, but what I don't want to do is set expectations when there's a lot of things that could happen. But taking it a day at a time, I think, is going to be the right approach for all of us, from a mental perspective and physically for Alaric.
You mentioned for Matthew that there was already a modified approach for him entering camp. Like, what is that overall going to look like once he returns?
That would probably represent something along the lines of, if you look at our 4-day blocks, one of those 4 days he would be off. And we'll do that with a couple other veteran players. As you look at the totality of the amount of work that we'll get in, and really when you are saying, hey, it's as important as anything to get as healthy and ready to go for week 1 as we possibly can. Some of those guys that have a lot more experience, that's where you're balancing that. Hey, you got to work. I think growth does demand a discomfort in terms of, setting those right calluses, but not being unnecessarily, pushing the envelope from a sports performance perspective where, guys feel worn down before you've even played one of these 17 that you're guaranteed. But one of the 4 days, to answer your question. Sorry for all the unnecessary BS there.
Sean, does your message change from year to year when you get to this day with players?
Yeah, you know what I would say, Maria? I think there's a consistency of values and principles, and I do think it's important for us to, evolve, adapt, and say what's specific and where we feel like this group needs. But there are some consistent things that, I was just walking over here with artists. I can't believe going into year 9, year 23 for artists. How about that? Isn't that awesome? But the answer is there's some consistent values and principles, but some of the things in terms of what we've learned, good and bad over the last 8 years, you absolutely try to apply. But the answer is yes, it does change, but there still is some similar things. You say, that feels similar to last year, and I think you want to be consistent in that.
I think this is the first time in your time here that continuity will carry over to offensive coordinator and special teams coordinator.
What the hell? I don't know what to do with myself.
What does having that continuity and stability do? What does it allow you to do in terms of teaching and preparation?
I think it's huge. I think the most important thing is being able to, delegate and give people autonomy and authority over things that they're capable of handling. And, you want to make sure that you're there to be in here to be able to, provide some vision or perspective if necessary. But, with Mike, with Chris, with Chase, there's a lot of trust. And that goes for the other coaches that are working on those sides of the ball as well. I think what's been really cool is the amount of turnover that we have had. I think we've gotten better at identifying the kinds of people that thrive in these atmospheres and environments that we want to cultivate. And the people are what it's all about, but it's a great thing. And I think as you're continuing to learn how you grow, how you can be better, how you can positively impact people, it's nice to feel like in a lot of instances, stepping back provides the clarity and then also gives the trust that has been earned by a lot of these guys to go do their thing, and then you can be there whenever is necessary, without diluting things.
Sean, what is it like, you mentioned your 9 season, it's crazy that it's already started 9 season.
Right.
What is that like now versus what it was when you were first camp?
Well, I think the first thing is there's a lot of learning. I think you're growing and maturing as a man, and that's continuously going on. But things in my life have changed in the better ways. You learn from your mistakes, how you deal with people. I think you become more empathetic, have more of a heart for people. Having my wife, having a son, it's awesome to be able to have my dad around. My parents were in town this week, and then my dad's around practice. We always joke, if you didn't know any better, you think that's Fran Kroenke because he walks around like he owns the team. But it's awesome. I think it's a blessing, and a lot of the things where the mistakes have occurred, I think, are where there's been some of the most gratifying moments that come from it, even though in those times you're like, man, it sure doesn't feel like there's anything good that's going to come of it. But I feel really fortunate, to be in a position where I think you're enjoying it even more. I think you have a healthier perspective without being any less competitive and crazy. That's not been a bad thing sometimes too.
We talked to Kyra. He's not holding out. He's not holding in. He's going to be on the grass for day 1. How important is that? Not only for continuity of the offense, but also because you have one of your starters, one of your top guys around his neck who's going to miss.
It's huge. I mean, he's handled himself like the guy that you guys know. I mean, that's just who he is. And we're going to sit down with Drew tomorrow. Looking forward to that. And there has been you know, you say these things all the time, and, you know, the ultimate goal in mind is for him to get under contract. And finding that sweet spot that fits for that puzzle that we're trying to piece together as a team, and what represents his value for the production and what he means to us, you know, those can sometimes be challenging things, but I think there's been a good, healthy, collaborative approach. We have gotten closer, haven't gotten the deal over the finish line, obviously, and he has done everything that he can control that makes you want to say, let's try to, in good faith, to figure this out for this guy, because he's representing all the things that are right about the Rams. And the way he plays, his spirit, his mindset, what he is as a teammate, how he responds to adversity, the physical and mental toughness. And so it means a lot, Greg. And, you know, I love this guy and love what he stands for and what he's about, most importantly as a man.
He said he anticipates getting a deal done. Do you as well?
I'm hopeful for that. You know, what I don't want to do, there's, you know, even just talking with Drew and Matthew Sharon yesterday, there's some things that, you know, where we're at and where they're at, that we've got to be able to bridge a gap for that to be able to get over the finish line. But based on, you know, where we are now compared to where we were, there has been, you know, a progressive, you know, approach towards that finish line. But, you know, I don't want to say anything. I'm hopeful that's the goal. Whether or not that ends up getting done, you know, we'll see, and you guys will find out, I'm sure, as soon as it does, if that's the case.
Sean, when you go through a year with a veteran like Jimmy as your backup, and then you're also planning for best case scenarios, you get to rest Matthew at the end of the season before playoffs, or in a case like this, you're planning in advance to modify his training camp. How do you notice Jimmy's approach as a backup who also knows he'll need a spot start in best case scenarios or in modified workout scenarios? How does his approach work? What's his process? How does that change from like a typical backup?
But what I think's great is it doesn't. You know, what I've noticed from him is consistency, steadiness. There's a lot of confidence that I think's been earned. You know, he's going into year 12. Sometimes people forget how much experience he's accumulated. And he's just got this great vibe about himself that whether it's leading the scout team or whether that's stepping in and, you know, leading the offense if we're giving Matthew a day off, you know, I think going back to Gary's point, consistency would be the answer. But this is a guy that, even though he's in that role here, he knows what he is and where he stands in the pecking order, where there's no doubt in my mind he's one of the, you know, he's a real quarterback. And I've got a lot of belief in him, and I feel really fortunate that we've got Matthew and then somebody, you know, as unique as Jimmy, that these situations with Matthew, I'm circling back with kind of what you asked earlier, Gary, don't worry about Matthew because of his experience. And I also know that, hey, you know, Matthew is so unique and special, but when you have a quality player like Jimmy that can step in, now you don't feel like the team is totally punished either. And that's a big deal to me, that allows a freedom to be best for Matthew, because you don't feel like you're punishing the team. Whereas, you know, we've been in some situations and scenarios where the drop-off is so drastic and so significant that now it's hurting our ability to move forward like what we want to be able to do. And by no means am I saying that, you know, we know how special Matthew is, but it's a blessing to have a player like Jimmy to be able to come in and you know, and he'll do an excellent job. And there is, you know, there's a lot of confidence that his teammates have in him. And it's really cool to watch the reverence and respect he has for Matthew and their relationship, and even, you know, watching Matthew mentor both of those guys and Stetson. It's a special quarterback room, and Matthew leads the way, but Jimmy's, I'm really glad that he came back.
Tell me more, Matt.